Also in the news, a little more happier, more upbeat and fun, is Zorin OS has a new
Yay.
release, 17.2. And as many of you have found out recently, I have found myself using Zorin OS for quite some time now. I don't even know how long I've been using it. A long time, months.
Which is the most shocking thing ever. Not because
Yep.
you're using Zorin. Zorin's got a lot of cool things about it. It's that you have not switched. You
Yeah.
are on the same system you've been on for months. And okay, for those who don't know much about our show in the past, Ryan has had this, people call it distro hopping. He has like this addiction to distro hopping. That's what it seemed like. But for the past few months, he's been using the same one. And that is just mind blowing. There are times where he would change his distro right before the show. And that wasn't rare. That was just Ryan being Ryan.
Normal. Yeah.
And like I did it one time and he was like, how could you do this? Like you do it almost every week. What are you talking about?
But the difference was when I did it, it worked. Whereas when you did it, we were down for an hour. So that just shows.
No, we were down for like 5 minutes and that was the whole Chromium thing not loading and having to reboot problem. That was not on me. That's a weird bug that you found too. And so
in any case, I normally prefer a cutting edge distro like Arch or Tumbleweed or something along those lines. So I think it would be interesting to talk about Zorin OS first, about why, before we get into the Zorin OS updates, that Zorin OS
why
is
Zorin OS, or why are you using Zorin OS so long?
I think both. I think this answers both. I mean, Zorin OS, when I thought about it prior, I thought, and we've had them on the show, but my whole take was more of like, this is for schools, this is for businesses where they want no fuss. I want something that's really easy for the people who are used to, students or my employees that are used to Windows 10, to be able to boot into Zorin OS and have, because one of its themes is a Windows 10-like theme, have a Windows theme that it just works like they wouldn't even really know, honestly, if they were on Windows or they were in Linux. And so it's got just a very easy user experience in there, and you don't have to worry about learning curves as much. It comes pre-installed, the premium version, with tons of software. I mean, like a lot of software, everything you could possibly imagine. And they're not all snaps too, which is an advantage. And it has a heavy focus on the Wine integration. So if you're relying on Microsoft products, again, I'm thinking about schools, I'm thinking about the small businesses and things, medium businesses, large businesses that want to use Zorin OS, that Microsoft product capability is very powerful because, if you're a lawyer or somebody else working in legal or very important documents, you're not going to want to worry about, if they open it up on the other side, is it going to translate correctly and not have the text all over the place? These are very important things. So its ability to integrate Microsoft Office, for instance, is one of its primary focus points of making sure that it works really well with its Wine integration and stuff like that. So for me, it's an OS that gets out of your way. And because I have so much going on in my life now, with college, 2 colleges right now, and because I'm taking courses for work and I'm actually going to college full time on my own as well, plus work and everything else, and podcasting and all this stuff. I don't have time to distro hop. It's the last thing on my mind. I need something stable that when it's time to do the show or I need to test something out is just going to work and it gets out of my way. And you all know I'm not going to do anything but change the wallpaper on a distro anyways. So, which would be a Batman wallpaper always.
Exactly. Always.
And so Zorin OS was like something I wanted to try. Say, hey, how reliable will this thing be? And I've really enjoyed my time with Zorin OS. Like it has booted every time perfectly, which is not unusual for Linux. So, I mean, that by itself is not extreme, but it's certainly very, very stable. It absolutely the software that I need to get anytime we're doing a show, Software Spotlight, anything else, it always seems to be available in the software store. And the integrations and various apps and the sound stuff we do at time to time from piping and other things, it's all there. And everything works really well. So Zorin is just a really solid foundation. It gets out of your way. It's set up beautifully by default. The menus make sense. They work really well. The icons are really good. Like if Michael didn't know I was on Zorin OS and he came to my house and turned on the computer, he'd be like, wow, you actually themed this really nice, Ryan. Now he would know it wasn't me because I don't do any of that.
First of all, I would know it wasn't you. Secondly, I know what Zorin looks like. And third, I would never imagine you would change anything. There was a time, just for reference, if people don't know how much Ryan does not change. I went to his house one time. This was, I don't know, a couple of years ago. He was running Arch and he was running vanilla XFCE. This is, for those who don't know, XFCE is not the best looking. It is much better now than it was then, but it's still not that good now. But back then, it looked like Windows 98. It was not good. And he's just using their normal. I turn on the computer and like, what is this? Why do you have default XFCE? Like, why are you making me use this? So I went and customized it for him because I couldn't take it.
It was so nice after you left.
But the best part is I come back later. He's got a whole new system with a whole new default. And it just does.
I needed you to come over and fix the theme again.
And then I said no. Because once is enough for me.
Well, Ryan, I want to tell you something. Now that you've stayed on Zorin and you know you need to get work done and it's become your stable environment, that means that you have reached the pinnacle of a Linux user into the advanced area, meaning you're not distro hopping anymore. You finally found a distro to stay on.
This is what Jill is referring to is the progression process of a Linux user. When you first start getting into it, you really just want something that works and get out of your way, and then you start getting into it and you start distro hopping and going
every distro on the planet.
And you want to try everything, and then you at some point in your experience, you will get to the point where you're like, I just want to use something and just be done with it. And no longer, you're just at that point. But what's funny is with Ryan, he's only been using Linux much shorter than Jill and I. So I think like 6 years or something, Yeah. So, and I have about 20 and Jill has before it existed. And then so Jill's also in a process where she is like trying all these different distros and stuff like that. And I found out that at a certain point, once you get to that progress, it does do a loop back. And now I want to distro hop again.
Yeah.
And a long time, for years, I was just like on the same one distro for 2 years, and I didn't even update one of them. And then like at one point I was on the same one for 5 years, and now it's so it turns out there is a cycle.
So I've got 14 years to wait, and then I'll cycle back.
You have a significant amount of time before it's kind of. It does not take. It's not a very quick process. Once you get, it's not that long to get to where you are. Then it takes a long time to get back.
Yeah, it definitely goes in phases. For me, what makes it easy is because I have hundreds of computers. I can install the different distros and all the
That's what I've been doing wrong. I just need hundreds of computers.
So
computer prices weren't so high.
I don't have to call it distro hopping. I can call it doing research for the show.
There you go.
So Jill found a loophole.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I really like Zorin OS. I like what they're doing in the market. I think there's absolutely a place for Zorin OS. The only thing that would disappoint me about Zorin OS is if I found out the devs did not contribute upstream to Ubuntu, because a lot of their great work would be not even possible. The foundation that they use is Ubuntu. And so if they're not, they absolutely need to be contributing upstream to Ubuntu, because they're selling what is essentially Ubuntu with a lot of beautiful work done on top of it. Then if we want to switch sides and say what would make me stay on Zorin OS forever, is if they could get the hardware enablement faster than Ubuntu. So, even though they've improved on this tremendously, Ubuntu recently, I'm big on making sure that Linux is on the cutting edge when it comes to hardware enablement, so that when a new processor comes out, a new GPU comes out, that the people who do happen to be getting a new machine that year and wanting to try Linux at the same time don't have a terrible experience because their hardware doesn't support it. So I would love to know that they did some extra stuff there on top of that. But that's my feeling with Zorin OS. I love it. I'm happy we have a new version. Jill, Michael, anything you want to add on the Zorin OS topic?
Yeah, so I've always been impressed with the look and feel of Zorin OS as well, because it does look like a desktop that would be familiar for a Windows user.
Yep.
And and you can customize it to make it look like Mac OS. Which is really
you can make
nice.
it look like anything. Yeah, we talked about Windows, but they've got tons of themes.
They sure do. They have tons of themes. And one of my other personal favorites is actually Zorin OS Lite. Speaking of XFCE, this version
is a fantastic example of XFCE.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what you can do. They don't do it, but this is what you can do.
Yeah, this is the version for older computers, and it has, like Michael was saying, one of the most visually appealing implementations of the XFCE desktop. It looks like their GNOME version, where the panel is on the bottom, so it's very Windows-esque. And it's customized beautifully. They've done their own enhancements on some of the apps to make it look like you're, coming from Windows. And it's really great for keeping older computers out of the landfill. And I just installed Zorin OS 17.02. I upgraded from Zorin 17 on one of my old Intel iMacs. So, it's keeping those machines out of the landfill and happy and working. And I did my
it's really lightweight with the XFCE version. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you always do the show notes on the topic that we're covering, because you have a computer with it, and it's amazing. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And Michael, awesome, you're a fan of Zorin OS as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think that Zorin OS has the design is very, just to be clear, for people who are maybe thinking that we're saying that it's meant to look like Windows 10, it just has the same user experience interface.
Layout
it doesn't have the layout is similar. It's not trying to copy Windows and make people think it's Windows. It's not doing that. It just has that flow. But I think it's a very nice system. I do consider it super weird that they use GNOME to make this system, because it just makes me confused. Like, why? Why? First of all, why? Also, how? Because you've modified GNOME to such a way that it doesn't look like GNOME basically at all. And then I think, but why would you do that? So I'm very curious.
With a different platform, you mean, and it would been easier.
Yeah, you already have, like, if you started with KDE Plasma, not because I'm a KDE fan, but just if you did.
Sure.
It kind of already has that flow in the first place. So why not start there? And it just makes me think, like, what's the reason? So we need to have Zorin back on the show so we can talk to him about
why they started with that.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. And also, you were talking about earlier about the contributions and that sort of stuff. I did reach out to Artyom from Zorin to find out. Unfortunately, there hasn't been that much time, so he hasn't seen the message yet. So in the future, like a comment or an update or somewhere, we'll let you know what the answer to that is.
Yeah.
But we did.
And if they're not, I just want them to. Like, if you're not giving a lot upstream, you should. And we'll get into that in a second. Let's talk about 17.2 real quick. You get more theming options, like ability to customize the theme of your cursor. That's always fun. I'm not going to do it.
Themes are the best.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Easier to navigate to third-party theme installation guides. So they also have third-party themes that people will go and create if you want something different outside of the plethora of themes you get with Zorin OS to begin with. You can go, and they're basically making it easier for you to navigate, so you don't have to be some insider that just finds the link and figures it out for you to get there. There's now a Windows section in settings where you can customize behaviors of your individual windows, like window placement behavior, how title bars act,
Windows
and how
of apps, not Windows.
Yeah, exactly. You can now set the scroll bar to either always be there or be dynamic, which I think is the default, is the dynamic scroll bar. So sometimes people just always want that scroll bar there. They just want to know it's there. It's a safety thing. It's like a safety rope. I know the scroll bar is there.
It's like a binky,
It's like a binky. Yeah. Latest version of the apps, of course, were updated and comes with Ubuntu 24.04 LTS kernel. So it comes with all the great stuff Ubuntu's done in that.
It's based on 22.04, but it has the kernel from 24.04 because of the hardware enablement and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Very
And
good
I noticed
clarification
that
there.
the Software Center is much quicker. They actually talked about it in one of the articles about speeding that up, and they really have. It's
Yeah.
impressive, even even on an old machine.
It is snappy. Zorin OS
Yeah.
for as heavy as you would think it would be with all the things that I just said, with all the apps and all the theming and stuff,
And
you would
being
think it
based
would be
on
heavy.
GNOME.
Yeah.
And being based on
Because
GNOME.
let's be frank about it. For those that don't know, the heaviest DE of all
Is
Linux
GNOME.
is GNOME.
Yeah.
And it's snappy, man. It's fast, it's snappy, it's responsive. It's what GNOME should be. It's what Windows should be. It's what GNOME should be. It's like it's because, by the way, there's app indicators like right there. I'm looking at them right now. I see Discord is
Brian,
open.
you are glazing way too much on
App
Zorin.
indicator. I can't help it, man. It's so good. But I do want to ask a question, and this is just an interesting parallel. And I'm not making a statement here. I'm just asking this question. We all know the drama that happened with Red Hat and Rocky Linux, right? That we covered that many times on the show. Essentially, Rocky Linux was alleged to just be kind of taking Red Hat's product and reselling it as their own and not contributing much upstream. And so Red Hat made decisions, right or wrong. We've already covered that a billion times in topics. Our take on it, right or wrong, they made some things to make it a lot more difficult. Now, they never said we're doing it because of Rocky, but we all kind of assumed it was because of Rocky. So, these are our opinions, but either way, the timing was right there with our opinion to make it seem like that's the situation. Companies like Rocky, and there were a lot of things that they were doing, like claiming they're better than Red Hat Linux and all this type of stuff, when in fact,
it's just hilarious.
There's just very interesting.
Being better at Rail than Rail makes no sense. Yeah. But they did claim.
In any case, the question I have is products like Zorin. Do you feel, since they're selling this product, now they have a free version, but they do sell this product, the premium version of it, and it's heavily relying on Ubuntu, that it's fair for them to do that?
What do you think, Jill?
Absolutely.
Well,
I really, Ubuntu does have their paid for versions on server side and whatnot, and also for the end user, you can pay for support. And to me, it's when we were talking earlier, I was talking about how Ubuntu is a lineage from Debian.
Mm-hmm.
And, Debian is, a completely free operating system that Ubuntu is now, makes money off of.
In a way.
And in a way, yeah. So
they give so much back to Debian.
They give so much back.
I think that is like Debian is so benefited by Ubuntu. Like, let's be honest about it. If Ubuntu did not exist, do we think Debian would be as big of an important distro as it is? Because
no, probably not.
Before Ubuntu, I tried Debian and it was not fun. And Ubuntu made Linux easy to use. For those who, are coming into Linux just now, it was not a great we've been around. Jill and I have been using Linux for years before Ubuntu existed. And there's a very different era. When Ubuntu came out, the era went from pain to easy. And that's what Ubuntu offered. So, and that's true for all of it. The only one that ever was in comparison was Mandrake, and that didn't last very long. So, there was a period of time where just using Linux was not fun. It was fun in the sense of you're learning technical
hacking, you're figuring out something unique.
So there's elements if you are that kind of person. But if you just want to get the system going and just use it, there was not that. There was even parts where back in the day, if you installed the system and chose the wrong monitor hertz in the config, you could break your monitor. That doesn't happen anymore, thankfully. But there's different elements. Like when Ubuntu came out, it changed the landscape of Linux, undeniably. Whether you like it or now or not, that's up to you. But it cannot be denied that they changed how people look at Linux. And that's why I feel like if Ubuntu didn't come out, would Debian ever make the changes to do what was necessary to get to that point? I don't feel like it, because they haven't done it now. So I don't feel like they ever would have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were saying earlier, being able to use X-Free 86 and not blow up your monitor was an achievement.
That's
Those of us,
That's crazy.
yes, that those of us in the early years of using Slackware and Debian, no.
I found out that process accidentally.
Oh my goodness!
I was in an IRC chat room, and I was just talking to some people, and then they found out how old I was, which at the time I was like 13 or something, and they were like, "Oh wow, that's great. So how did you figure out like how did you know what hertz your monitor was?" And I was like, "What?" And then they're like, "Wait a minute,
you guessed it.
How did I just guessed it?" And then they said, "You are so lucky. If your parents would have been so mad if you had broken your your monitor because you chose the wrong thing." And the reason I chose it is because, for those who don't know, it was 59.9% or 60, or not 59 hertz or 60 hertz. And if you chose the wrong one, you would mess it up. I chose 60 because I just thought it would be better if it was a more faster monitor, which it happened to be. But
thank goodness,
if I had the revelation was like terrifying and massive relief at the same time.
Yeah.
But now,
so Michael didn't turn
cares.
his CRT around and look at the little label, and it does.
I didn't even know I had to do that. That was the thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, bringing it back though, like Ubuntu did amazing things for Debian. Debian's done amazing things for Ubuntu. So it's a very symbiotic
100%.
relationship. Yeah. And Zorin has created this incredible product we're talking about here that we really like, that's based on a lot of the work that Ubuntu's done. And the question is, really back to what you asked the team there, Michael, is, are they giving back? Is it a symbiotic relationship like Ubuntu and Debian? And I like to think the answer is yes. And I'm guessing it is. And I really hope that's the case. But if it's not Zorin, you need to fix it. You need to. That's all I'm going to say.
I agree. If it's not, they should definitely do something. I feel like there is definitely some level of pushing back upstream stuff, because they are also releasing everything as an open source thing. So they have a pro feature, but all the pro thing is more of like you're supporting the project and you're getting extra stuff, but it's all cosmetic stuff like themes and whatnot.
And you're not getting, you get all that stuff on your own if you want to.
And you this is just more like they're packaging it easier for you and that sort of stuff. So you're doing it more of like, this is lowering the barrier of getting started, but you don't actually have to do it in order to get everything that's in there. It's just they're doing it for you. And I think that's a perfectly fine position to have a premium version for. If you want to have like an easier starting point, you can do it. If you just want the regular out of the box, you get it. And it's a great out of the box. There's that. But your question is really interesting because it's relating to the Rocky Linux versus Red Hat thing. And I think that there's a parallel there in the sense of like, it's a distro based on another distro, but there is a huge difference because Zorin is based on Ubuntu and modifies basically everything. Like the appearance, the presentation, they add extra features, they build their own stuff. And then you have Rocky Linux, which is literally marketing itself as a clone, a one-to-one, or they called it a bug-for-bug clone of Red Hat. That is like, I think that's not fair. Is it fair what Zorin is doing? Absolutely. Because they're making an adjustment. They are actually, in their opinion, and in my opinion, in some ways, they're improving the experience. And I feel like if you're doing something on top of it, you are modifying in some way, providing your own experience, your own implementation.
That's the very hacky open source way.
Yeah, right? That's the open source way. And there's and Ubuntu wouldn't even be bothered by that because there are so many other distros that are doing the same thing. So they don't, as long as you're doing something of merit, of some value, you're doing something, even if it's just changing the desktop use. That's what the flavors do. Like they basically just change that. And Ubuntu's totally fine with that because of course they would be. Whereas the difference is, Red Hat has people who are making exact clones, and all they do is basically changing the logo. And they pretty much say that they're bug for bug compatible, which is a terrible marketing term, but still they say that. And that in itself, in my opinion, is not fair. Yes, it's open source. Technically speaking, you have the right to do it, but it's still not a good thing to do. It's not a cool thing to do. Like in my opinion, man. Like it's not a, I agree. It's a bad action that the only reason you're doing is to make money. Like that is in itself I think, offensive anyway.
Yeah. So
offensive to the open source, like, essence. I don't know how to describe it. That's how I feel.
It's a little bit definitely awkward, I think, when you look at the story. If you're looking at it unbiasedly, even if you're a big Rocky fan, it's a little bit awkward, the position that they took. And Red Hat's response to it was also awkward. Let me say that. But in any case, Zorin OS 17.2. It's beautiful. If you've not checked out Zorin, I highly recommend you check it out. Even if you're an experienced user who's been using Linux forever, I think you'll find things you absolutely love about it. Either way, definitely check out Zorin OS 17.2. Very excited about it.